Let me start with a brutal truth. Most people are too timid to say out loud. No one cares about your intentions. They only care about your image. In a world built on perception, power belongs not to those who are most virtuous, but to those who are most visually strategic. The poor man who dresses like a king commands more doors than the king who dresses like a beggar. You think that's unfair? Machiavelli would call it reality. The illusion of strength is often stronger than strength itself. That's why the lion's roar keeps hyenas at bay long before the fight begins. Humans are no different. We submit, admire, and follow appearances of power, not the essence of it. And that's where most people sabotage their destiny, not through lack of potential, but through careless presentation. While others comfort themselves with talk of authenticity, the Machiavellian mind studies optics. It understands what Machiavelli wrote in The Prince: men in general judge more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see, but few can touch. The battlefield of modern life is not fought with swords, it's fought with symbols. Every glance, every gesture, every possession you display communicates your rank in the invisible hierarchy. And make no mistake, hierarchy still rules everything. I learned this lesson the hard way. Years ago, I walked into a networking event with ambition, but no armor, no sharp suit, no quiet watch, no cultivated presence. I spoke with conviction, shared ideas that could have changed the room, and yet I was dismissed before I finished my first sentence. One man even said, "You've got passion, kid, but you look like you just came from a student protest." That night, I went home angry not at them, but at myself. I realized I had shown up unarmed to a war of perception. I expected intellect to win battles reserved for image. That was the day I swore I'd never enter another arena looking like prey. Months later, I returned, same ideas, same ambition, different exterior. Tailored suit, calm demeanor, controlled silence. I said less, but was heard more. Deals I had begged for before now came to me. The difference wasn't luck, it was optics. Julius Caesar knew this principle intimately. He wore the laurel crown not merely to celebrate victory, but to hide his balding head, a perceived weakness. Every detail of his presentation was calculated to evoke divine authority. When he crossed the Rubicon, he didn't just march with soldiers, he marched with spectacle. Rome didn't fear his legions alone. They feared the image of inevitability he projected. Centuries later, Winston Churchill crafted his persona the same way. The bow tie, the cigar, the bulldog scowl, not accidental quirks, but deliberate construction. When Britain needed strength, he gave them the appearance of an unbreakable man, even as bombs fell overhead. He understood the Machiavellian secret. People don't follow truth, they follow symbols of stability. Here's the principle you must internalize. Perception is power, presentation is armor, appearance is strategy. If you look powerless, people will treat you as such regardless of your true potential. If you appear valuable, society will conspire to make it true. To look poor even when you are is to broadcast weakness, need, and dependence. And in the Machiavellian world, weakness is never pitied, it's exploited. Your appearance, your tone, your energy, these are not aesthetic choices, they are weapons. You must choose them as a general chooses his army with precision and purpose. So the question is not, should I fake wealth? The real question is, can I afford to look weak while I build my empire? How many opportunities have you already lost because someone dismissed you at first glance? How many rooms did you walk into unarmored, believing merit alone would protect you? And how long will you keep playing the moral victim instead of the strategic player? In the next section, I'll take you deeper into the personal cost of looking powerless. I'll show you how society conditions you to wear your struggle like a badge of honor, and how that single belief system quietly keeps you poor, invisible, and obedient. Because as we'll see, the first prison isn't built of stone, it's built of image. Power doesn't respect sincerity, it respects image. That's the unspoken rule of every society, every boardroom, every empire. I learned it not from a book, but from humiliation. Years ago, I walked into a meeting with a man who could have changed my life. I had nothing but an idea, one I believed was worth millions. But belief doesn't pay for tailoring, and I showed up in a shirt I'd worn too many times. He listened for a few minutes, nodded politely, and said, "You've got passion, but you're not ready." He wasn't judging my idea. He was judging my presentation. That day, I realized something Machiavelli understood centuries ago. The world doesn't see who you are, it sees what you signal. Poverty isn't just about having less. It's about appearing powerless. It's about communicating through your appearance, your posture, your tone, that you're someone others can overlook. That night, I sat alone in a cheap cafe, staring at the reflection of a man who looked defeated. And I hated it not because I was broke, but because I looked harmless. I looked like someone waiting for permission. I swore that day I'd never again appear weak. Even if I had nothing, I'd move like I had everything. That decision changed everything. Months later, I met that same investor again. Same man, same idea. But this time, I wore presence like armor. I spoke less. I moved slower. My clothes were simple, but precise. I didn't chase approval, I commanded attention. Within minutes, his tone changed. He leaned in. "Are you still working on that project?" he asked. Nothing about my idea had changed, but I had. That's the Machiavellian law of optics. People follow what looks inevitable. Napoleon understood it when he tailored his uniform before battle, shining his boots until they caught the sunday. Even as a young officer, he understood that soldiers obey symbols of confidence before they obey orders. And when the cannons fired, his army followed the image of invincibility he had crafted. Centuries later, Churchill did the same during the Blitz. London was burning, morale collapsing, yet he appeared in public, calm, composed, defiant, always dressed in control. He knew leadership was theater. If he looked shaken, Britain would crumble. So he wore unbreakability like a costume, and by doing so, turned costume into truth. Power begins as performance. The performance becomes belief. The belief becomes law. That's the cycle most never understand. They wait until they make it to look powerful. The strategist reverses it. He looks powerful to make it inevitable. If you're broke, that's temporary. If you look broke, that's strategic suicide. You cannot inspire trust if your image screams uncertainty. You cannot attract wealth while dressing like struggle. You cannot lead when your energy whispers apology. And this isn't about luxury, it's about precision. The crease of your shirt, the calm in your tone, the steadiness of your movements. Power reveals itself in the details. The man who masters the small things becomes trusted with the great. So ask yourself, how many doors have stayed closed because you looked like someone who couldn't protect what's behind them? How many people dismissed your ideas because your exterior whispered unprepared? How much potential have you buried beneath casual neglect of image? In a world of predators, the appearance of weakness is an invitation. You don't need to be rich, but you must never look poor. Looking poor is not humility, it's exposure. It tells the world you're safe to ignore, safe to use, safe to step over. The truth is harsh, but necessary. Respect is visual before it's intellectual. You teach others how to treat you by what you show them. Most will never understand this. They'll keep clinging to the myth that authenticity means showing every flaw. But you and I, we study reality, not comfort. So, let me ask you, when you walk into a room, do you look like a contender or a casualty? Do you look like a man in control of his fate, or one hoping someone will save him? Every glance, every gesture, every thread tells a story. The only question is, does yours say power or poverty? And if that answer unsettles you, good. Because discomfort is the first step toward control. History doesn't reward the righteous. It rewards the strategic. Every empire, every dynasty, every enduring legacy was built not just on power, but on the illusion of power. The wise never separated the two. The fools still do. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. When he wrote The Prince in 1513, he wasn't giving moral advice, he was revealing survival tactics. He wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." That single sentence has built and destroyed civilizations. Appearance is not decoration, it's defense. Look back at Caesar. When he returned to Rome after conquering Gaul, he didn't sneak in quietly. He entered through the gates in a chariot of gold, dressed in a crimson cloak, his soldiers chanting his name. The Senate feared him not because of his army's numbers, but because his image had become unstoppable. The sight of him was victory. That's why when he crossed the Rubicon, the Republic surrendered before the first sword was drawn. Centuries later, Alexander the Great used the same playbook. He studied the Persians, not just their tactics, but their theater. He began dressing like them, speaking with regal restraint, standing taller, slower, colder. His transformation was deliberate, a message: I am no longer Macedonian, I am imperial, and the world believed it. Before he ruled the East, he looked like he already did. The same rule applied to monarchs, generals, and even modern leaders. Churchill crafted his bulldog image deliberately: the cigar, the coat, the hat. Roosevelt's calm radio voice during crisis. Kennedy's unshakable smile on camera. Every move, every gesture, every tone was choreography, because they all understood when people are afraid, they don't seek the truth, they seek the appearance of stability. Now, contrast that with the average man today: careless posture, unshaven face, unintentional words. He calls it authenticity. The Machiavellian calls it exposure. Because when you display chaos, the world doesn't empathize, it categorizes. Weak, unready, replaceable. Power, historically, was performed first. Kings were crowned long before they were wise. Generals were saluted long before they were proven. Their image created faith. Their faith created action. Action created results. The process begins with appearance. Always. The poor man says, "I'll look successful when I become successful." But history laughs at that. Caesar looked divine before Rome called him a god. Napoleon carried himself like an emperor while still a general. It wasn't delusion, it was design. The external world mirrors the internal conviction you display. You want the world to take you seriously? You must first look inevitable. But that requires discipline, not luxury, not fake designer labels. Discipline, clean presentation, controlled emotion, deliberate silence. When you walk into a room, every detail must whisper, "I belong here." Because history has shown again and again, the man who looks out of place gets treated as such. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago in the courts of Florence. He watched men lose power not because they lacked intelligence, but because they lacked presence. Their rivals wore confidence like armor. Their silence carried more threat than their words. And when the time came to choose sides, everyone followed the man who looked unshakable. Power is a theater. The world is the audience, and the stakes are your influence. This isn't about vanity. It's about control. The poor man thinks appearances are lies. The strategist knows they are tools. Every strong ruler, from Caesar to Napoleon to modern leaders, has weaponized perception. Because perception moves people faster than truth ever could. So ask yourself, whose playbook are you following? The naive idealist who believes effort alone wins? Or the Machiavellian who builds the illusion first, knowing that reality will obey it soon after? Look back through history, every conqueror mastered two arts: the art of war and the art of image. Most men today study neither. They scroll through quotes about hustle, while emperors built empires through presence. You think people underestimate you because they don't know your worth? No. They underestimate you because you don't signal it. Every historical empire was first an empire of the mind, then of appearance, then of land. The order never changes. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people will never apply this. They'll keep pretending virtue is enough. They'll keep dressing like surrender, moving like apology, speaking like fear, and they'll spend a lifetime wondering why no one listens. But not you. If you've made it this far, you've already begun to see the pattern, the formula that built kings from soldiers and legends from men. So, let's go further. In the next part, we'll move from philosophy to evidence. You'll see how modern psychology and data confirm what Machiavelli and Caesar already knew, that the way you appear literally changes the way the world responds to you. History wrote the blueprint. Now, science proves it. Modern science has spent decades confirming what Machiavelli wrote 5 centuries ago. Appearance is not decoration, it's a weapon. Psychologists call it the halo effect. Economists call it signaling theory. Sociologists call it status projection. But beneath all the jargon, it's the same ancient truth. Humans are wired to judge by sight before thought. You walk into a room, and in less than 3 seconds, the people around you have already decided your value. They've assessed your posture, your grooming, your tone, your aura. Before you've spoken a word, they've filed you into one of 3 categories: leader, follower, or background noise. And the brutal truth? Once they decide, it's almost impossible to change. This isn't opinion, it's measurable. Princeton University ran a study where participants were asked to judge competence based solely on faces shown for 1/10 of a second. The result? Their snap judgments predicted actual election outcomes with startling accuracy. In other words, voters chose presidents the same way wolves choose alphas, by appearance of dominance. Think about that. Nations are led, wars are fought, and billions are moved by faces that look competent. The entire structure of human hierarchy is built on perception. Even in modern business, appearance remains law. In 2019, a Yale study found that candidates judged as more put-together posture, grooming, voice modulation were hired 35% more often, regardless of resume quality. Another found that well-dressed individuals received better customer service, faster responses, and more trust. Not because of morality, but because humans instinctively equate sharpness with capability. Now think of how Machiavelli would interpret this. He'd say, appearances are the first proof of power, because to the human brain, order in your exterior signals order in your mind. Control over your image signals control over your life. The opposite disarray, neglect, sloppiness signals chaos, and chaos repels trust. The Machiavellian understands this and uses it deliberately. He knows every shirt pressed, every silence held, every word enunciated is a signal, a subtle message saying, I'm not to be underestimated. But here's where most people fail. They mistake this for vanity. They say, I don't care what people think. That's not confidence, that's ignorance. Every powerful figure in history, from Alexander to Roosevelt, mastered what people think, then used it to direct reality. The man who doesn't care about perception isn't free. He's invisible. Let me tell you a story that drove this home for me. I once mentored a young entrepreneur, brilliant but chronically overlooked. He wore baggy clothes, spoke too quickly, fidgeted constantly. He said, I want to be taken seriously. I told him, you're asking people to believe in something you don't even package with conviction. We spent 2 months reshaping his presence, posture, attire, tonality, rhythm of speech. When he returned to the same investors who had ignored him, they said, something's changed about you. Within weeks, he secured funding he'd been chasing for a year. His mind was the same, but his signal had evolved. This is the evidence-based secret of perception. The brain doesn't separate the signal from the source. It assumes what looks powerful is powerful. That's why generals wear medals, CEOs wear tailored suits, and influencers wear designer scarcity. It's not about fashion, it's about leverage. You don't need money to control perception. You need awareness. You need precision. Keep your clothes simple but intentional. Keep your tone slow but sharp. Keep your environment clean. These microsignals compound into macro authority. Because here's what neuroscience proves. The mind associates neatness with discipline, calm with confidence, silence with power. When you project these, you're no longer asking for respect, you're commanding it. While others waste years building internal strength, hoping the world will one day see it, you will build external authority that forces the world to acknowledge it. Ask yourself, when people look at you, what does their brain register in the first 3 seconds? Stability or struggle? Control or confusion? Do they see someone to invest in or someone to overlook? Most people will never even ask those questions. They'll spend their lives trying to convince others they're capable instead of simply appearing that way from the start. But you know better now. Because Machiavelli wasn't teaching manipulation, he was teaching survival. He was revealing the truth every predator in the jungle already knows. Camouflage is life. Exposure is death. In the next part, we'll go further from evidence to strategy. I'll show you how to build a personal system of optics, how to design your presence, your voice, your wardrobe, your online footprint, so that every signal you emit commands respect and opportunity. Because once you master the law of appearance, you'll never have to ask for power again. You'll attract it. Power doesn't wait for you to deserve it. It responds to structure, strategy, and symbols. If the previous part proved that appearance shapes perception, this part is about how to deliberately engineer that perception, how to build a presence so composed, so intentional, that opportunities begin to orbit you. To the Machiavellian, presentation is not fashion, it's fortification. Every element of your image, from clothing to tone to environment, should reinforce one message: control. Control over yourself, your surroundings, and your direction. Start with the body, because your posture is your first proclamation of power. Shoulders slightly back, spine aligned, movements deliberate and minimal. Fast, erratic motion signals anxiety. Stillness signals dominance. When Alexander faced enemies, he didn't flinch or fidget. He stood statuesque, knowing that armies respond not to words, but to the energy of certainty. Then comes attire. You don't need excess, you need precision. Neutral colors, structured fits, clean details. A Machiavellian never dresses to impress, he dresses to command space. Think Caesar in his laurel crown, not because it was beautiful, but because it was symbolic. Even his flaws were hidden by strategy. He understood that the human eye associates symmetry and clarity with power. Your appearance must do the same. Next, control your voice. The weak man speaks quickly, as if trying to prove his worth before being interrupted. The powerful man lets silence do the heavy lifting. Speak in measured tones, each sentence deliberate, every pause intentional. Churchill mastered this. During Britain's darkest hours, he spoke slowly, each word a hammer striking fear into chaos. His voice was stability. Then comes the environment. The background of your life, your desk, your home, your digital presence tells the world whether you are in control or in disarray. A cluttered space projects indecision. A curated one signals order. Even Sun Tzu taught this in a different form. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. But chaos only rewards those who command it, not those swallowed by it. Now, here's the deeper layer most never see: consistency. Power isn't built on occasional excellence. It's built on sustained precision. Your presentation must be predictable, reliable, unshakable. When others fluctuate, you remain composed. When they react emotionally, you remain strategic. That consistency becomes your brand and your armor. There's a psychological phenomenon called dominance certainty bias. It means humans instinctively trust those who appear stable under pressure. The man who doesn't flinch when others panic becomes the natural leader, even if he has no title. The Machiavellian cultivates that composure daily, in voice, in body, in timing. Let me give you a story. Years ago, I was negotiating a deal that could change everything for me. The opposing party tried to provoke me insults, delays, silent treatments. The old me would have argued, defended, reacted, but I remembered the law of optics. The first to lose composure loses control. So, I waited. I spoke little. I let silence do the talking. Within an hour, they conceded more than I asked for. Why? Because my stillness looked like certainty, and certainty looks like leverage. This is the secret generals, rulers, and corporate titans all share. Control your optics, and the world will project competence onto you. Lose that control, and you invite chaos into your reputation. There's a reason, Napoleon said. A man must conform his exterior to the role he would play. Every time you walk into a room, ask yourself, what role am I playing today, and does my exterior match it? Because if it doesn't, you're invisible. Most people walk around broadcasting confusion. Their clothing says one thing, their tone another, their energy something else entirely. The Machiavellian unifies all signals into one coherent frequency: power. To begin, design a system. Choose a visual identity that projects discipline, sharp, minimal, timeless. Develop vocal control, record yourself. Slow down, eliminate filler words. Curate your environment, remove chaos, add order. Guard your digital image every post. Every word must reflect intent. Each signal, small alone, becomes monumental in combination. When your words, image, and demeanor align, you stop needing validation. You become validation. Ask yourself, do people feel calm or chaotic in your presence? Do your clothes, your voice, your habits announce control or confusion? Would Caesar recognize a general in you or a civilian lost in battle? The truth is, most people will never structure their appearance because structure feels restrictive. They want to be free. But freedom without form is noise. And in a world of noise, the structured man becomes magnetic. As we move forward, we'll confront the resistance, the inner voices, and social pressures that whisper, "You're being fake," or "You're trying too hard." You'll learn how to silence them, how to transform guilt into power, and how to make strategy feel like second nature. Because no general ever apologized for wearing armor, and neither should you. Most people die as spectators of their own potential. They wait for recognition, hoping someone will crown them worthy. But the Machiavellian never waits, he crowns himself. He becomes the architect of his destiny, not the servant of circumstance. And that's where this journey leads. From understanding perception to commanding fate. You now know the law of optics, the strategies of power, the architecture of image. But knowledge without execution is cowardice, dressed as intellect. The question now is simple. Will you use this truth, or will you bury it under excuses? Because time is moving. As we speak, someone less intelligent than you, less talented than you, is becoming more powerful simply because they've mastered what you've ignored: appearance, composure, and perception. While you debate authenticity, they're building an empire of impressions. You've learned that looking poor, mentally, emotionally, or physically, isn't humility. It's exposure. You've seen how history rewards those who weaponize image: Caesar's divine poise, Napoleon's theatrical command, Churchill's defiant calm. Each of them understood that perception isn't deceit, it's strategy. They didn't fake power. They embodied it before the world confirmed it. But there's one final truth they all lived by. Perception is not the goal, it's the gateway. The image is built to open doors, but it's the discipline behind it that keeps them open. Once you've mastered the external, you must maintain it with relentless internal order. You are no longer allowed to drift through life reacting to circumstance. From this point forward, everything you do must be deliberate. How you walk, how you speak, how you breathe. Because when you move without intent, you broadcast weakness. And weakness, in the eyes of the powerful, is an invitation to control. There's a concept I call the command mirror. Every morning, look at your reflection and ask, would I follow this person into battle? If the answer is no, adjust. The man in the mirror is not your reflection, he's your general. Dress him, train him, refine him until he looks unstoppable. Because when you look like power long enough, You begin to feel it, and once you feel it, the world will treat you accordingly. But remember, this transformation will demand sacrifice. You will outgrow people who prefer you unthreatening. You will intimidate those who live in mediocrity. You will be misunderstood, accused of arrogance, isolation, coldness. That's the price of sovereignty. You cannot command respect while begging for approval. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must learn to be both the lion and the fox, the lion to inspire fear, the fox to perceive traps. You must be both. Commanding without awareness is tyranny. Awareness without command is impotence. The balance is what creates true power. Let's make it practical. Starting tomorrow, wake early, even when no one's watching. The unseen discipline becomes visible authority. Maintain your environment like a temple. Every object around you must serve your focus or reflect your order. Speak with weight. Each word is a currency. Spend it like gold. Move with purpose. No wasted gestures, no frantic motions. Let calmness become your intimidation. And never, ever complain. Complaint is the language of the powerless. Strategy is the language of rulers. You're no longer a participant in life's economy of luck. You're a strategist in control of perception and reality. When you walk into a room, people will feel something shift, not because of what you say, but because of what you emit. Power is energy. Composure is gravity. Together, they bend the room toward you. And here's the paradox that separates masters from imitators. Once you perfect the image, you must forget it. You must let it become instinct. The king doesn't think about looking royal, he simply is. The moment you no longer perform power and instead embody it, you cross the final threshold. That's when perception becomes presence. So now I ask you, are you the type of person who will leave this as a concept, or will you become a living demonstration of control? Will you walk back into the world disguised as the same man, or reborn as someone no one dares underestimate? History doesn't remember those who waited. It remembers those who appeared inevitable. The time for theory is over. The stage is yours. Your silence will speak louder than your words. Your posture will command before you're introduced. Your presence will declare war on mediocrity. And when they ask, "What changed?" you won't need to answer. They'll see it. So go. Build the empire of your appearance. Rule the kingdom of your mind. Never look poor again. Not in wealth, not in energy, not in presence. Because the world doesn't belong to the worthy, it belongs to the perceived.